Look up, right now, wherever you are, through the ceiling, through the clouds, through the thin blue film of our atmosphere. You won't see them, you never do. But they are there, thousands of them, silent, watchful, indispensable. They are the silent servants of your every waking moment, the ghosts in the machine of modern life. And tonight I need to tell you something that might shatter the quiet certainty of your world. We have been looking at the wrong battlefield. For years, the headlines have screamed about aircraft carriers, about hypersonic missiles slicing through the sky, about the drumbeat of a looming confrontation in the Pacific. But while our gaze has been fixed on the horizon, a far more consequential, far more terrifying competition has been unfolding in the one place we have chosen to ignore. The place above every ocean, above every city, above every argument. Space. This is not a story about the future, this is a story about right now. The intelligence assessments that are whispered in the sealed, climate-controlled corridors of the Pentagon, the warnings from the most senior American space and defense officials, and the quiet, methodical publications of Chinese military science journals are all converging on a single, devastating conclusion. A conclusion so alarming, so absolute, that most public officials have been terrified to say it out loud. But I am not a public official, and you deserve to know the truth. China may already possess the operational capability to end the American way of war. Not in a year, not in a month, in 15 minutes. From the moment a conflict begins, within the time it takes to drink a cup of coffee, the People's Liberation Army could potentially disable, degrade, or destroy every militarily significant American satellite in orbit. Every single one. The eyes, the ears, the voice, the very nervous system of the most powerful military machine in human history switched off. If this scenario unfolds, the United States military would not be weakened. It would be functionally blind, deaf, and paralyzed. It would be thrown back into the dark ages of warfare at the precise moment when the ability to see, communicate, and strike with precision is the only thing standing between victory and catastrophic defeat. And here is the deepest cut, the part of this story that should keep you awake tonight. Most Americans have absolutely no idea this is happening. They do not know how completely their daily lives, their banks, their power grids, their food supply chains, their internet depend on these fragile, orbiting machines. They do not know that the greatest vulnerability of the most powerful nation on Earth is not a wall, not a missile silo, but a silent, invisible architecture of glass and silicon, flying 7,000 miles per hour, 400 miles above our heads. And they certainly do not know that an adversary has spent 30 years learning how to break it. Let's fix that ignorance, right now. Let's look up at the abyss together. To understand the horror of what a successful Chinese anti-satellite campaign would mean, you have to first understand a secret that the American military has never really wanted to admit. They are addicted to space. It is not a convenience. It is not a luxury. It is the essential, fragile nervous system of everything they do. It is the invisible architecture that connects every sensor to every shooter, every general to every soldier, every smart bomb to its target. Without it, the beast that is the U.S. military does not just get a cold, it goes into cardiac arrest. Let's start with the obvious one. GPS. You think it's just for maps on your phone. You are wrong. GPS is the metronome of modern warfare. It provides the precise positioning and timing data that guides every single precision-guided munition in the American arsenal. Every JDAM smart bomb, every Tomahawk cruise missile, every drone strike, every naval vessel navigating the contested waters of the South China Sea, every ground unit calling for fire support. Without the atomic clocks ticking in those medium Earth orbit satellites, a precision-guided bomb reverts to a dumb iron bomb from World War II, with a circular error probability measured in hundreds of feet instead of 10 feet. American naval vessels lose the precise positioning needed for coordinated maneuvers or mine avoidance. The entire concept of shoot-and-scoot artillery collapses. The degradation of combat effectiveness from GPS loss alone would be so staggering, so total, that analysts have estimated it would reduce the most technologically sophisticated military in history to a level of operational precision not seen since the early stages of the First Gulf War. It would be like taking a scalpel out of a surgeon's hand and giving him a rusty hammer. But GPS is just the beginning. That is just the sense of touch. What about their voice? American military communication satellites, the vast, secretive constellations like the Milstar and AEHF systems, provide the backbone of secure, high-bandwidth communications. They are the untraceable phone lines that connect the White House Situation Room to a submarine on the bottom of the ocean, to a B-2 bomber flying over the Pacific, to a squad of Rangers in a firefight. Without these satellites, the ability of commanders in Washington to speak to their forces degrades instantly. The secure voice links go silent. The real-time data streams from drones stop flowing. The digital picture of the battlefield, that beautiful, godlike view of the entire war that American commanders depend on, collapses into a fragmented, static-filled mess of incomplete and outdated information. American forces would have to fall back on high-frequency radio, a technology from the 1940s that is slow, easily intercepted, and utterly inadequate for the blinding speed of modern conflict. They would be fighting with tin cans and string, and then comes the blindness, the deepest darkness. American intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance satellites, the spy satellites, are the third critical layer. These are the KH-11s and the Topaz radar satellites. They can resolve an object the size of a dinner plate from 500 miles up. They can see through clouds with radar. They can listen to enemy radio chatter and pinpoint exactly where it came from. These satellites provide American commanders with a level of situational awareness that is nothing short of supernatural. They can see enemy divisions massing for an attack before the enemy's own second-in-command knows about it. They can track hypersonic missiles as they streak through the atmosphere. The loss of this satellite-based intelligence picture would not be a reduction in capability. It would be strategic blindness, absolute darkness. Enemy forces could maneuver, concentrate, and strike without ever being observed. A Chinese missile frigate could slip its moorings and vanish into the vastness of the ocean. A hypersonic glide vehicle could be launched, and American missile warning satellites, which are designed to detect the heat of a launch, might be the first to be taken out, meaning the first warning the Pentagon gets of a nuclear strike is the flash of the explosion itself. The locations of enemy submarines, aircraft carriers, and ground forces would become a mystery, forcing American commanders to make catastrophic assumptions they would have to guess. And in modern warfare, if you are guessing, you have already lost. This is the house of cards. This is the architecture of dominance. And for 3 decades, the People's Liberation Army of China has been studying every single card, looking for the one to pull to make the whole thing collapse. They learned the lesson in 1991. During the First Gulf War, the world watched as American satellites turned a conventional army into a ghost. Chinese military analysts watched with a mixture of awe and terror. They saw how GPS enabled the left hook that crushed the Iraqi Republican Guard. They saw how communication satellites allowed General Schwarzkopf to coordinate a massive air campaign from a headquarters in Riyadh. They concluded, with the ruthless strategic clarity that defines their long-term planning, that American space capabilities were both the source of American military dominance and its most critical vulnerability. They realized that you do not need to build a bigger navy than the United States. You just need to blind it. And so, for 30 years, in secret facilities in the Gobi Desert and in the mountains of Sichuan, they built a toolkit, a toolbox of death for the stars. It is not one weapon. It is a symphony of destruction. And they have 5 distinct instruments in their orchestra. The first instrument is the one they have been bold enough to show the world, the Direct-ascent kinetic kill vehicle. A ground-launched missile designed to do one thing, smash into a satellite at 15,000 miles per hour. In January 2007, they tested it. They destroyed one of their own old weather satellites, and the world gasped, not just because they did it, but because of the debris. The explosion created a cloud of thousands of pieces of shrapnel traveling at orbital velocities that now threaten every satellite in low Earth orbit to this day. Since then, they have gotten better. American intelligence now assesses that China has systems capable of reaching the higher graveyards where our GPS and missile warning satellites live. These are the guns. Loud, visible, but slow. The second instrument is the knife in the dark, the Co-orbital attack system. Imagine a satellite. It looks just like a civilian research module. It launches peacefully during peacetime. It orbits innocently for months, but slowly, silently, using precise maneuvering thrusters, it drifts closer to an American military satellite. It gets within touching distance. And then, on command, it either fires a projectile, releases a net, or simply uses a robotic arm to smash its target into uselessness. China has already demonstrated satellite rendezvous and proximity operations that have alarmed American security analysts. They have moved satellites to within meters of other objects. They have tested what look like grappling arms. These co-orbital weapons can be pre-positioned in orbit today, sleeping silently next to our most vital assets, waiting for a single digital command to wake up and kill. You cannot shoot down a missile that is already sitting next to your eye. The third instrument is the Ghost, directed energy, ground-based lasers hidden in the mountains of western China. When an American reconnaissance satellite passes overhead, these lasers fire. They do not blow it up. They do not create debris. They simply blind it. They cook the sensitive optical sensors that took $1 billion to build, rendering the satellite a flying piece of junk in a fraction of a second. The advantage here is deniability. A satellite that goes blind might just be a technical malfunction. By the time the engineers figure out it was a laser strike, the war could be over. China also has high-powered microwave weapons that can fry the electronics of satellites with a burst of invisible energy. No explosion, no warning, just a sudden, permanent death. The fourth instrument is the fog of war. Electronic warfare, GPS jamming, communication spoofing. You don't need to destroy a GPS satellite to make it useless. You just need to flood the frequency with noise so that the receiver on the ground can't hear the signal. China has already been caught jamming GPS in the South China Sea, testing how much interference they can generate. In a war scenario, they would blanket the entire Pacific theater with a scream of static. American bombs would lose their way. American ships wouldn't know where they are. And to make it worse, they have spoofing, the ability to broadcast fake GPS signals, telling an American destroyer that it is 5 miles away from where it actually is, steering it directly into an enemy minefield or an enemy missile. You cannot trust your own eyes if someone else is telling you what to see. And the fifth instrument is the invisible blade, cyber warfare. Because even if you harden the satellites, you still have to talk to them from the ground. The ground stations at Vandenberg, at Schriever Air Force Base, at Diego Garcia, these are just computer networks. And Chinese state-sponsored hackers, the same ones who have infiltrated the Office of Personnel Management, the same ones who hunt for secrets in American defense contractors, are almost certainly already inside. They have pre-positioned their malware. They have mapped the networks. When the order comes, they don't need to shoot a missile. They just need to press a button on a keyboard in Shanghai, and the command to reorbit or shut down will appear on the screen of an American operator who will have no idea the order is fake. The ground station will turn off the satellites itself. Now, put the toolkit together. This is not a theory. This is a wargame scenario. This is what the analysts at the Center for Strategic and International Studies run in their classified simulations. This is the 15-minute war. It is a Tuesday. Tensions in the Pacific have finally boiled over. Maybe it is Taiwan. Maybe it is the Spratly Islands. The news is full of talking heads, but deep in a bunker under the Pentagon, the screens are still green, for now. At T-0, the conflict begins, but not with a missile launch, not with a fighter jet. It begins with a click. In the first second, ground-based lasers in western China sweep across the sky. 3 American KH-11 optical reconnaissance satellites passing over the Pacific go dark. Their operators see a sudden, overwhelming flare of light, and then nothing. White noise. They are blind. At the same moment, a dozen GPS jammers, hidden on Chinese cargo ships and islands in the South China Sea, activate. The entire region is flooded with interference. A U.S. Navy destroyer in the area loses its navigation. Its computers throw up error messages. The captain looks at the charts and sees his ship is supposedly in the middle of a mountain. In the first minute, the co-orbital killers wake up. 2 civilian Chinese satellites, which have been slowly drifting towards a Milstar communication satellite over the Indian Ocean for 6 months, receive their code. Their maneuvering thrusters fire. They close the last 50 meters. One releases a high-velocity projectile. The other simply rams itself into the satellite's antenna array. The most expensive phone line in history goes dead. Silence. Back in the Pentagon, the generals pick up the red phone to Pacific Command. There is no dial tone, just static. In the 5th minute, the cyber attack hits. At Schriever Space Force Base in Colorado, screens flicker. A technician watches in horror as his mouse cursor moves on its own. He is locked out. A message appears on his screen in Mandarin, though he doesn't know it. The ground station is now under enemy control. The antennas begin to swivel, pointing away from the satellites they are supposed to command, searching for signals that aren't there. The ground station for the S-Bayer's missile warning system, the system designed to detect a nuclear missile launch, is disconnected. A critical link in the nuclear defense chain is severed. By the 10th minute, it is chaos. The American forces in the Pacific are not fighting the enemy. They are fighting their own equipment. A flight of F-35s, the most advanced jets in the world, scrambles to intercept incoming Chinese bombers. But without GPS, their inertial navigation systems are drifting. They cannot find their tanker for refueling. Their secure data links are down, so they cannot share targeting information. They are 5 of the most expensive blind bats ever built, flying in the dark. An Army Stryker brigade, moving to block a Chinese armored column, pulls out a paper map. The commander, trained for decades to trust his tablet, realizes he hasn't used a compass in 15 years. He doesn't even know exactly where his own units are, let alone the enemy. By the 15th minute, the assessment is complete. It is not a reduction in capability, it is a collapse. The United States military, the superpower that defeated the Soviet Union, that crushed Saddam Hussein, that spent trillions on technology, has been thrown back to the year 1970. It has eyes, but they are human eyes, limited to the horizon. It has ears, but they are radios that can be jammed by a $500 Chinese transmitter. It has weapons, but they are dumb, unguided, and inaccurate. The enemy, meanwhile, is fighting with their own systems fully intact. They can see everything. They can talk to everyone. They are coordinated, precise, and fast. The American military is slow, blind, and deaf. And then comes the second wave. the civilian collapse, because the disaster does not stop at the water's edge. It comes home. As the GPS constellation flickers and dies, the Federal Aviation Administration grounds every commercial airliner in the United States. Thousands of planes are stuck on runways. The financial markets in New York freeze because the high-frequency trading algorithms rely on GPS timestamps. Cell phone networks begin to fail as the timing synchronization collapses. The power grid, which uses GPS to stabilize the alternating current frequency, begins to surge and brown out. In 100 cities, the lights flicker and die. It is not a nuclear war. It is a silent technical apocalypse. The enemy did not need to bomb our cities. They just needed to turn off the clock. And while we are fumbling in the dark, trying to figure out why our phones don't work and our cars are lost, the real war is being lost 9,000 miles away. I told you at the beginning that this was a story about vulnerability, but it is also a story about awareness. And it is a story about time, because the United States is finally waking up. The establishment of the United States Space Force in 2019 was not a joke. No matter how many late-night hosts mocked the camouflage uniforms, it was an admission of guilt, an admission that we have been asleep at the wheel. The Space Force, for all its growing pains, is trying to do the hardest thing a military can do, change the way it thinks. They are working on solutions. They are building redundant constellations, smaller, cheaper, more numerous satellites that are harder to kill all at once. They are hardening their satellites against cyberattack and blinding lasers. They are developing rapid launch capabilities so that if a satellite goes down, they can shoot a new one up on a commercial rocket within hours, not years. They are finally, after decades of denial, practicing fighting in a GPS-denied environment. They are teaching pilots to use sextants again. They are teaching soldiers to read paper maps. It is a painful, humbling process, but the solution is not just in the Pentagon. It is in the mind of every person listening to this voice right now. The first step to defending the high ground is realizing that the high ground exists. The age of the satellite is the age of vulnerability. We built a world that depends on a handful of glass and aluminum machines orbiting a giant nuclear reactor, and we pretended they were permanent. They are not. They are fragile, and they are threatened. The question is not whether China could do this. The question is whether they will, and that depends on deterrence. That depends on them knowing that if they touch our eyes in the sky, the response will be so devastating, so overwhelming, that the price will never be worth the prize. That depends on the United States developing the ability to defend its assets and to hold their assets at risk. It depends on us taking space seriously, not as a place for scientific discovery, but as the ultimate high ground of human conflict. Do not be afraid of this knowledge. Be empowered by it. The fact that you are here, that you listen to this, means you are no longer one of the unaware. You are part of the small percentage of humanity that understands the real battlefield, and understanding is the beginning of action. So the next time you look up at the night sky, do not just see the stars, see the silent sentinels, see the fragile threads holding our world together, and know that up there, in that endless, silent, freezing void, a competition is happening that will determine the fate of this century. It is a battle for the high ground, and we cannot afford to lose it. Because if we lose the high ground, we lose everything below it. Every city, every home, every light, every hope. The silence up there is not peaceful. It is waiting and it is listening. Good night.